Welcome to Rucks, Malls and Oval Balls. That's right. It's the fans' favourite rugby podcast, brought to you by the fans' favourite rugby podcast hosts. It's me, Dave, joined by Rory. Rory, say hello to our lovely, lovely listeners.
Hello. Hello, David. Hello, listeners. Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another week of Rocks, Malls and Oval Balls.
Oh, yes.
How are you, David?
We're back. Yeah, I'm good. I've had a weekend of feeling a little bit under the weather, but, you know, we won't dwell on the negatives. We won't dwell on that. Obviously, there's some lovely rugby to talk about. Still very much in Operation Get House Ready to Move. Still very much in Operation Being a Dad. So, you know, there's no such thing as a quiet day, but, you know, who wants quiet days when, you know, life's there to be lived, Rory. Life is there to be lived. But my main question to you, Rory, how are you? Because you're facing down the barrel of a rugbyless window of time where you're not playing any of the sport we love. Yeah. So I'm just kind of treading on eggshells to make sure that you're okay, checking in on you and making sure everything's okay.
Thank you for your concern. Yeah, well, we had our end of season players dinner on Saturday. So I'll be entirely frank, David, I'm still not feeling quite right.
Okay. Okay. Funny shellfish?
It could be that. All I know is on camera I look semi like a corpse still. And that doesn't seem to have abated since Sunday. Well, I was going to say Sunday morning, but I didn't wake up till about 1 PM on Sunday. So,
I wish I knew what that felt like.
Yeah. Strong night. But yeah, that'll be my probably last bit of work at the club for a little while until pre-season starts. It's always around the corner.
Did you scoop any merits or accolades, or was it just an opportunity to sing and praise about the 3 titles you won anyway?
Absolutely, yes. No personal accolades to me this year. I was handing out accolades for the Lions, giving some speeches, trying to steal as much limelight as possible. But no personal accolades for me on this occasion. But a good night had by all, attended by members of the first team, the Lions, the Rhinos, and the ladies team, who all had successful seasons.
Oh, it must be a feel-good factor over at, I forget the name of your place.
The Gables.
The Gables, yeah, it must be feel-good at the Gables at the moment.
It was certainly jolly on Saturday.
And a little bit on Sunday morning. Well,
a little bit on Sunday morning.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, Rory. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure you've got lots of things planned to keep you busy in the meantime and wait for the season ahead. But we're just going to have to find some other topic for us to talk about at the start of these episodes before we get into the real stuff. Because now your season's finished, I don't know what we're going to talk about.
I'm going to have to find some hobbies.
Yeah, in our aforementioned banter section. It's hard. It's hard to have banter when you don't have topic to banter over because we're so good at that.
Yeah, let's be frank. The aforementioned banter section was the weekly Lions report.
I feel that is a fair assessment. A fair assessment indeed. Saying that, we still have a podcast to do. So I'm going to segue away from the banter section. And, we've got a fair bit of news going on. There's lots of things going on in the world of rugby once again. We have a lovely round of rugby to discuss in the Gallagher Prem. And there's a certain international squad, training camp squad, has been announced that we will deep dive into. So that's going to be, knowing the way we like to talk about rugby, Rory, it's going to be another jam-packed episode.
We'll try and keep it as elongated as last week's.
Fantastic. So strap on in, people. You're in for a solid hour and a half, I imagine, of pure rugby noise. But we're going to go straight into it. We're going to start off with some news. And the first thing that caught our eye this week, Rory, was there's some noise, there's some rumour mill, there's some interesting stuff coming out about South African sides potentially leaving the European competition. And oh no, I hear you shout. But yeah, give us your view, Rory, and give us a bit of a background on that.
Well, it came out from the SARU chief that they are having a meeting in July, I believe, about which competition South African sides should potentially withdraw from. Chief amongst which looking like it's going to be the European Champions Cup and European Challenge Cup. It's being framed as the top South African players are playing too much rugby, and they need to have the opportunity to rest and get away from the game. So it's been framed as a player welfare thing, which on the face of it, I'm in favour of. I think player welfare is important. And I think there's an argument about the South African players' calendar, which is effectively a 12-month calendar a lot of the time, because of the nature of playing in the Rugby Championship, which obviously takes place across August, September, generally, I think, off the back of the summer internationals, their winter internationals, which obviously come hot off the heel of the European leagues and European Cup competitions. So I think South African teams do have less breaks throughout the year. I don't think the number of games played by the top South African players differs wildly from their certainly their English and French counterparts. It slightly varies when you go to some of the other nations, but the French players, I think, generally still play the most games. And I think the English and South African ones are pretty comparable. The difference is that they don't get any kind of elongated break. So, for example, if any players on the Lions last year, most of those were off for anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks after the Lions. So I can see the argument there. I also think there is an argument to say that the South African teams being involved in the European Cups has not been a successful venture. Logistically, it's been difficult. It's been difficult to get teams consistently taking their strongest sides to South Africa. It's been difficult to get the strongest South African teams to visit the Northern Hemisphere on a week-to-week basis. And part of that is down to the format of the competition, which had to be adapted to accommodate the South African teams. And part of it, I think, is down to, let's be frank, a fair amount of apathy towards the European competitions in South Africa. It hasn't taken on. It hasn't been embraced by the South African public, which is, I actually don't blame them for. If you just drop people into competition they've got no real connection to, why would they suddenly start caring so much about it?
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't blame them for that. There's some chat in South Africa, they would like to withdraw their franchises from the URC as well and go back to a Curry Cup format. There are some that would like to go back to Super Rugby, all of which I can understand. I think where this actually boils down to is World Rugby need to get a global calendar sorted out so that we can align these competitions properly. Because at the moment, it's too much square pegs round holes, make do amend, just getting by on the current calendar. And there's probably too much rugby being played, which, you know, given that we're a rugby pod...
Blasphemy.
It does sound blasphemous, but let me put something to you, David.
Okay.
Of the contact sports, physical contact sports, the most profitable, the one that makes most money, is NFL. A regular season of NFL, I think, is 19 games plus playoffs and Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's half a year.
Well, it's not even that. It goes on for about 4 months.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be a problem for NFL fans. They do have college ball and there's other things going on around it. They can watch at other times of the year. But actually, brevity of a season isn't necessarily the problem. More games does not equal more quality. And I think particularly with the European competitions, have probably made this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you didn't draw the comparison to the NHL, because they play hundreds of games in a year and play back-to-back about 4 games a week. But I take your point, yes.
Well, baseball's a great example of that. You know, they play many more games than that. Well, let me tell you, not all of those games are sellouts.
No, they're not.
Well,
I suppose there's definitely something in it about, like you say, the global calendar, making it so there is a system or something in place that ensures players do get a break, that there is, almost brings a degree of fairness as well in like the global competition. I think they are moving towards, well, we know they're moving towards it. It's been spoken about some time. I think that's part of this Nations Championship that's coming this year, is to try and bring both hemispheres together in various ways. It is going to be the domestic game where it's going to be a real sticking point, because, let's face it, rugby is a winter sport traditionally, and in the Northern Hemisphere, our winter is at a different time to the Southern Hemisphere. So it's finding that that sweet spot domestically so that the domestic games in both hemispheres don't suffer or get impacted to a sense where then you're playing almost two different sports in some way. That's the tricky bit that needs to be figured out.
Someone is going to have to vote against their interest. A Turkey's going to have to vote for Christmas and accept that they're going to have to take a hit in the short term for the betterment of the game in the long term. And this is the problem with World Rugby. It's too fractured. It's full of too many self-interested parties. So I don't have a great faith that they're going to manage it anytime soon. They talk about the global calendar and they say it's on the agenda constantly. I don't think we're that much closer to actually arranging one, but perhaps we will get there.
Yeah, I don't know what will come first, the global calendar or HS2. I really don't know.
2039 they reckon today, didn't they, for the HS2? Yeah. 109 billion. So imagine if we just got a little bit of that just to go into the Prem.
Just a smidge of that.
Just a smidge.
Yeah. How about the HS2 Highlanders? Sponsor a team or something like that.
Yeah. I don't hate it.
No, there's worse ideas. Oh dear. But let's not get detracted from the point. South Africa want to pull away from European teams. I did see that some of the comments of the owner of, I can't remember which team it was now, but one of the owners for the South African franchise basically said, if you pull the teams out of Champions Cup, I'm pulling my funding, because they're basically the owners of the private franchises in South Africa are basically bankrolling these South African teams and surviving, and the South African unions aren't covering all the costs. So I think within South African rugby, we may be getting to a bit of a tete-a-tete and a bit of a crunch point when it comes to domestic, the union, and God forbid, the South African rugby world isn't necessarily all sunshine and rainbows at times. And right now, it doesn't seem to be heading in the right direction.
Well, it isn't, but they have to do something with the European Cups because it's been somewhat farcical over the last couple of years. And the South African teams don't seem that intent on partaking in it properly in any kind of meaningful way. So ultimately, I think that's the really good. I mean, to be honest, my gut feel is the South African teams will decide that this venture into Europe hasn't been what they hoped it would be, and will either go to Super Rugby or go back to a Curry Cup.
Yeah, and if they pull out of URC, it'll be really interesting to see what the ripple effect is, because it could lead to the reorganisation of the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, like we've been talking about. Maybe less teams. It'll be interesting to see the impact it could have on the URC and where they try and either fill the gaps or whether they close some of the slots in the league to have a few less fixtures.
Could lead to that British and Irish League we were talking about.
Could lead to the British and Irish League. So this could be like the first domino in what could be a significant level of change that could impact British domestic rugby as well. So listeners, keep your eyes on developments in South African rugby and where they decide to put out their franchises in the years ahead, because it could have quite a big impact on the sport we love. That's the headline, people. Moving on, in continued news section, we would not be doing our part if we if we weren't giving our flowers and our congratulations and our rounds of applause to the Red Roses for once again getting another Grand Slam in the Women's Six Nations.
Yeah, and in style. Yeah, it has to be said. They talked before the tournament about bringing a new attacking style and moving away from the forward-dominated style that got them the World Cup. I think by the end of the tournament, you see the fruits of that. They are playing some genuinely very attractive rugby. A tough battle against the French team on Sunday, who took an early lead. But the character of that Red Roses side is beyond reproach at this point. They are winners. They know how to win, and it is a formidable winning machine they've built at the moment. There are the usual criticisms of another England win that are all too predictable. What I would say to anyone who thinks that women's rugby is just solely going to be dominated by England, have a look at some of the age grade results that have come through recently. Some will argue worrying signs for England. Others will argue very positive signs for the strengthening of the likes of France and Italy and Ireland, who have all taken scalps at the youth level against England. And I think you're going to see this England dominance be challenged very heavily in future years. But the Red Roses side themselves deserve all the congratulations for this one. Another monstrous performance from them, absolutely dominating the competition in the end. Very disappointed to only come fourth in our fantasy league this year, David. I had some good weeks, but such is life. Couldn't quite top off the league. But some of the performance for the Red Roses, some of the usual faces really putting down, even though there were a lot of players missing from the World Cup side and even from the start of the tournament. But still the likes of Jess Breach, Ellie Kildunn, Meg Jones, Lucy Packer, Holly Aitchison, Zoe Harrison, all still just performing at such a high level. I think, this winning machine will roll on for a little while yet, but there are signs on the horizon that there are teams coming to challenge.
Yeah, and I think we should be encouraging the Red Roses to keep on improving and keep on being this rolling machine of victories, because it's setting the level that these other nations they're working towards. But if they keep making improvements and upping their own level, it makes the gap that they need to cover far greater, and it means when that time comes, when the French sides, the Italian sides, the Irish sides, they do get to the level of the Red Roses, the level and standard of women's rugby at the international level is going to be so good. And I don't think it's going to be far off when the Red Roses aren't going to be the only ones winning trophies, because I think, especially France, I feel like they are not going to be too far off being real challengers. So, huge congratulations to the Red Roses. They deserve every bit of plaudits and any sorts of congratulations they get. Perfect timing in the run-up to the first ever Women's Lions Tour, which I suspect a lot of Red Roses to be part of. And they've just got to enjoy it while they're in it, because being part of such a successful team doesn't happen for many sports people in their lives. So they just
keep raising the bar.
Just keep raising the bar. Now it feels like a really awkward segue into the next news topic, but there isn't really a good way of segueing into the next one. Obviously, it's the sad news around Scott Hastings.
Yes.
Away.
Yeah, one of the finest players for Scotland. Obviously, his heyday was slightly before our time, but he was part of the last Scottish side to win a Grand Slam in 1990, I think it was, alongside Gavin Hastings. No, really sad news. Came a bit out of the blue. Only 61, no age, is it? No complications from existing conditions. Very sad news for Scottish rugby and for rugby in general, really. All of the outpouring of affection towards Scott has been unequivocal about what a lovely bloke he was, which speaks volumes of the man. But no, very very sad news, and I thought certainly not news that we should have let gone past without mentioning, because it's a big loss to the world of rugby. I'm sure there'll be some time set aside to mourn him in north of the border and in the wider rugby community as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the horrible things about us getting older, Rory, is a lot of these names that kind of we've grown up with. Hopefully there's not going to be more, but Scott Hastings is a name I recognise from listening to my dad talk about rugby. It was like his time was just before our time, but you hear stories about how good Scotland were in like the late 80s, early 90s, and like the Hastings brothers being a huge part of that. So when you hear about like this sort of news, it just kind of brings you back down to earth, makes you realise that rugby is just a sport, and like I said at the very start, life is precious, life's for living, and hopefully there's an opportunity for people to use it, to mourn and think about someone who's had such a big impact on the sport, especially north of the border. But yes, and again, another tricky segue out of some sad news into a coaching appointment now. We need to figure out better segues between these topics, Rory.
Thematically, it's been tricky.
It's tricky, but an ex-Scottish international has been moved into the English coaching ticket full-time. Byron McGuigan being assigned quite an interesting coaching role, I'd say.
Very niche addition to the ever moving England rugby coaching carousel. He has joined the setup as, I get this right, collisions, aerial skills, and general back three coach.
Yeah.
Now, look, All those are important skills that need coaching. I'm not 100% certain you need another coach to fill those skills. You have an attack coach, you have a defense coach, you have a scrum coach, you have obviously all your strength and conditioning coaches is another voice. I don't know. One of the questions that was put towards the underperforming England side in the Six Nations was, were they getting confused with too many voices, too many changing voices in the changing room?
I know what I'm going to do. Add another voice.
Add another voice, yeah. Also, they've got a forwards coach. Well, Joe Alabd I think is still there, at least ostensibly for the time being. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, what strikes me with this is, I'm not saying that you can't coach international players, but my assumption, and again, I could be completely wrong, and feel free to challenge me on this, David. My assumption with what an international coaching setup needs, barring the period before a World Cup when you get, what is it, sort of 8-10 weeks with the players, something like that. With the England team, you actually only get very short periods of time in which you have the players. You might get a week or 2 weeks before you start having fixtures.
And the odd 3-day training camp.
3-day training camp, as we'll touch on later. How much coaching can you actually possibly do with these players in that time? And if these are meant to be international standard players, do they need coaching, that kind of granular level of skill? Or is that something that you can say, when you're away with your clubs, keep working on this because it's a skill you're going to need to be really, really good at for international rugby? And then when you come into the international setup, is it not just a case of getting everyone aligned behind a game plan and getting them motivated? Am I wrong for thinking this? That you actually, how much coaching could you possibly do with players at that level in that amount of time?
I feel it's a very fair challenge, particularly if we were to be cynical around it, to bring a coach into the three players and positions on the pitch that Steve Borthwick traditionally hasn't made the most of. It seems a bit redundant getting a coach in to coach the three players he doesn't seem to have a plan to get the ball in the hands of.
Is it just there to support their loneliness?
Yeah. Basically, he's basically a conditioning coach to how to chase kicks, as much as I gather. But no, I think you're quite right to make that criticism. It does feel like, are we just moving into too many cooks? And I worry it's going to be too many voices. Like even look at most club sides; they don't have as many coaches as the England squad does. So why they need?
And I get the sense that's a budget thing, but I mean, surely the assumption is, I'm not saying if you get picked for international rugby, you're a complete player and there's nothing you could ever improve on. But surely the assumption is, if you're international level, particularly international level in a tier 1 nation, you're being picked because you're good enough to play international rugby. That should be the idea. Or they think that you're going to be good enough to play international rugby. So surely what you're just trying to get in there is, what's your game plan, what you're doing in each area of the field, set moves, because you can train those, and motivation, getting behind the badge, all that kind of stuff. Like, so for that you'd need, a head coach or manager or whatever you want to call it, coordinating it, an attack coach, a defence coach, and maybe a set piece coach.
Yeah. Why do you need more than that?
Why would you need more than that? And realistically, for a short period of time, why do you need more than those voices?
I don't know. And if you think about it, in a camp now, it means that the squad's going to be so split up, having their own individual specialist sessions. How are you going to build the flow and the cue of the team being able to play together and be on the same hymn sheet if you're spending your entire training sessions up in different little pockets? Like, the back three players are over there with Byron, the centres, the fly off the scrum half are over with Lee Blackett, the back row with Joe Alabd, making sure they know how to do a ruck, and then all the props are with whoever's in charge of the scrum at the moment.
Tom Harrison.
Like, how are they supposed to come together as a team?
I mean, there must be points. I mean, they've got 42 players in this squad. Some of them just aren't going to meet all the other players, are they? It's not got time.
Well, I imagine that's why it's 3 days, because day 1 is just the old meet and greet, 2 is a bit of training, and 3 is getting everyone's number.
Yeah, 2 is just sort of handing out your roster for which coach you're going to be with that day.
Yeah, exactly.
I just find it implausible that you'd need anything more than 3 or 4 coaches max.
I agree. It feels overkill, But I will say, to counter all that, throw back to last summer or the summer before, where Byron McGrigan was on the coaching ticket for the Argentina and USA tour, and we were saying afterwards we need to figure out a way to get the likes of him into the coaching team more permanently.
I'm not questioning. Yeah, I'm not questioning that he's a bad coach. But he was on the Argentine tour as defence coach.
Yeah,
it was Lee Blackett and him.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, you know,
isn't Richard Wrigglesworth still in the coaching team as well?
He's the defence coach. He went from attack coach to defence coach.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Presumably because he's just equally good at both. I don't know.
Scrum halves are renowned for their defensive ability. That's fine.
Wow. I mean, I don't know. I just find. I mean, of course, and you got Kevin Sinfield, who seems to be the vibes coach.
To be fair, he's pretty good at that.
Look, I'm not saying get rid of Kevin Sinfield. I just have Ken Sinfield in charge of everything, frankly. But I don't know. I just find it odd that you need that many coaches.
No, I completely agree. Well, proof will be in the pudding. Let's see how they fare this summer.
Listener, if you disagree with me, get in touch. I genuinely would be interested to hear, particularly from anyone who's been in anything akin to this kind of environment.
Just coaches in general. Like, how does it feel?
Or coaches in general. Just give me an idea as to why you might possibly need this many different voices for this type of setup. I genuinely be interested to hear it.
Yeah, likewise. You know how to get in touch with us. If you don't, we have an email address, ruxballsoverballs@outlook.com. You can text us on the text number if you press on the link in the episode description. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, or wherever, YouTube. Drop us a message, coaches. We want to hear what you think. But we go from the news and we move swiftly into Prem Rugby action.
Let's get into it.
I'm a bit happier to start this week off, Rory, compared to last week.
Well, David, before you get too happy about it, I think it's only fair, as we have done with other blowouts in this season, you know, we treat it with the same level of contempt and we don't focus on it. We just move on to another game.
No. We talk about Northampton Saints breaking records, Rory. We don't ignore records being broken.
Well, I think, look, the long and short of it is Bristol scored the best tries. They were absolutely stitched up by the referee with particularly the Revuva yellow card. I thought it was very unfair. Ultimately, they can't beat 16 men.
Oh, Rory. You little troll. You know that Saints performance would have beaten Bristol with 16 men. Let's face it. The Saints were so good. Now, I'm not denying the fact that it was one of those occasions where it felt like every single bounce of the ball went in Saints' favour. I'm not ignoring that fact. I'm not ignoring the fact that Bristol did seem to get on the wrong side of Luke Pearce. That stern look he gave Fitzharding for trying to question the thing, and he was basically sent the captain away because he didn't want to hear him. I'm not ignoring all that, but that does not take away from that Northampton Saints performance, especially the first half, which was absolutely just spectacular. It's what's been brewing for a while now, in that we've been saying since Six Nations, it's just not been clicking for Northampton. They couldn't piece some phases together. They were dropping balls. This was the game it clicked, and I knew it in the back of my mind. The second it clicked, it was going to be something special. I didn't think it was going to be this special. 94 points?
94-33 it was, yes. 61-14 at half-time.
Yeah.
Look, all trolling aside, it was sort of rugby out of this world.
And don't get me wrong, Bristol were bad.
Mitigation being, I've played against better defences this year for the Lions than Bristol put up on Friday night. I mean, the disorganisation after look, Saints move the ball around well. I'm not denying that. Like, Saints move the ball around well. The running lines off the ball are fantastic. I mean, what Saints are able to do ball in hand is unmatched by anyone in the league. Probably the closest ones would have been Bristol before Friday. But, you know, Saints at their absolute best have this sort of almost telepathic ability to read each other's running lines. I take the Callum Chick try as a good example. Actually, you know, Finn Smith makes the break. He actually misses the Coles run inside. But the fact that Coles was there on the inside, you know, the second row was lolloping along with the fly half. Then throws the big wide pass out to Freeman, who's tracking it tracking it wide, who puts the grubber kick through, and Chick's there supporting to get it over the line. It's everyone's just sort of flowing in one direction with Saints, or in one purpose, I should say. I think is it Hendy's first try. Pollock makes the break. I mean, where the Bristol defence were, I do not know, but Pollock makes the break and throws a really lovely pass out wide. That's Pollock. For me, that's Pollock at his best, when he's showing that he's a back rower with the skills of a 12.
It was definitely his best game of the season, I'd say.
Yeah. When he's playing like that, actually everything else kind of fades into the background, because the front and the personality, as important as those things are, and as much as we've enjoyed them at times, actually you can boil it back down to, no, he is just a fantastic player, and he did show that really well on Friday. I thought Rory Hutchinson at 12 was magnificent, just seemed to be everywhere. Bagged 2 tries himself. McParland, another fantastic performance from him. I mean, he's got himself into the training squad. He is rapidly putting his hand up to get a shot this summer. But all of that has to be slightly tempered by the fact that Bristol, after one phase, one carry, one offload, their defence just fell into disarray. They got so narrow. The first Henry try is a good example. It's a really good break and pass from Pollock, but he's only got to throw it over one man because seemingly 13, 14 Bristol players at the other side of the posts.
Yeah.
Which is like, how has that happened?
Yeah.
How has this happened so quickly? And they were getting pulled over. People were breaking up the fringes. People were breaking out wide. They were flooding through midfield. One off. I think it might be Pollock's try, where McParland snipes up the fringe, just reaches around the back and offloads it. And there's 2 Saints players ready to catch the pass. Bears players have barely half turned to track it.
Yeah. And
Saints are already going under the sticks again. Baffling defensive performance from Bristol. And I don't think it's surprising after a result like that, and actually the way the season's ending for Bristol, that there are questions being asked now as to whether Pat Lamb's on the brink of leaving Bristol, which at points of the season would have been unthinkable, because at times they've been fantastic, and they've got some really good wins, but that performance just, and I know they've got a lot of injuries, I know that it's been madness how bad the injury crisis has been for Bristol all season. But you can't really attribute that to just the lack of...
That doesn't... The organisation...
Nothing else.
Lack of organisation, the defensive shape, that should be drilled into every player, regardless of where they are in the depth chart of the rugby squad. And you look at the starting team for Bristol, it wasn't a weak team. It was a pretty strong team.
It's a pretty strong... it's not got everyone they'd want on the pitch, but it's not a million miles off. And, Rich Lane was hauled off after 30 minutes because he was just getting turned out. And Rich Lane's a player I really liked. Rich Lane. I think he's one of those players, almost plucked from obscurity from the Championship. One of those really good Moneyball signings that some clubs have managed to pull together in the last couple of years. And he's a really, really good example of it. But he was at 6s and 7s in this one.
I just think against that Northampton back line, I think they spotted that on this occasion, pace-wise, he just didn't have it to match Freeman or Hendy. And I think they'd identified that every time they got through and they just isolated him, it was like a guaranteed try. But obviously it wasn't just his fault, because the tries kept coming once they took him off. I did feel a bit bad for him.
I think he was maybe scapegoated is too harsh, but or too much of a let-off maybe. But, that whole performance just smacked of throwing in the towel. I mean, Ravuvu, I will maintain the Ravuvu yellow card for the deliberate knock-on was harsh. He went with 2 hands. I don't think that's a yellow card.
I have a slightly different view, because he may have gone with 2 hands, but you look at the shape of his hands, it was more of a charge down than an attempted catch. So even if you've gone with 2 hands, that's not trying to catch the ball. That's just blocking the ball with 2 hands. And it was a potentially try-stopping intervention. So by the letter of the law, it's a yellow card.
Luke Pearce is a good referee. He didn't even look at a replay. You're telling me he noticed that it was that Ravu's hands weren't exactly in a catching position.
Irregardless of that, I still don't think it means it's the wrong decision because Luke Pearce didn't look at it again. I think upon a replay, it doesn't look like an attempted catch. Is my point.
Maybe. I mean, it's
supposed to be a genuine attempt to catch the ball. That's the difference. It didn't look like it to me.
It might have been a bad attempt to catch it, but I think it's harsh. But regardless, you go down to 14 men. That's not an excuse to ship 3 tries in 10 minutes.
No, absolutely. And
it's just not. No, I mean, baffling performance from Bristol, and I think Pat Lamb's got some
serious questions.
He'll have some questions for the players,
and Jordan Craig
and
as
he's
well.
got some questions to answer himself, I suspect, both internally and maybe to himself as to whether he's getting the tune out of these players that he should be. But from a Saints perspective, I mean, scary performance, really.
Yes, it needed to be a reaction to the week before against Leicester, put it that way, and we certainly got one.
You got the reaction you got more than what you would have bargained for, I suspect, in terms of reaction.
Yeah. So I'm chuffed to bits, Rory.
He's chuffed to bits.
I'm chuffed to bits. But we won't dwell on it too much longer. As much as I'd love to talk about that game in much more detail, there's a few other games. I would say this weekend, again, was another one where there's quite a few big scores leading us into the next game, which was Bath up against the Newcastle Red Bulls, which, again, not a glowing indictment to...
No. Can I be honest, David? The Red Bulls thing's lost its shine for me now after this season. I mean, there were points in the first half of the season where I really thought they were building towards pulling something together, and now it's more like it's a little tragic now. And
it's every game you watch for them it becomes more and more difficult. The thing that I really struggle with is I can't help but think back to the game where they came to Franklin's Gardens and gave Northampton one hell of a match.
A
real big scare. And they played
they
so
got it
well.
In them,
and it's just been a drastic downward slope since that point. And there's no signs of it changing. It's we all know what's going on at Red Bulls. Everyone's aware of what's going on at Red Bulls. It's quite clearly obvious that a number of players are probably throwing in the towel, either because their careers are coming to an end, they're looking for a job and they don't want to get injured, or they just know that their heart's not in it because Red Bulls aren't backing them. And Red Bulls have decided that they're going to pick interesting squads. They're testing some younger players. It doesn't seem like they're even trying to win games with some of their squad selections. It's just,
it's just limping within the season. I mean, again, it's hardly even worth analysing as a game, if I'm honest. I mean, Tom Dunn gets himself a harsh red card. I think a fairly harsh red card. I didn't think it was a red. I thought it was a yellow. But
it's always tricky with those sorts of ones, isn't it? Because again, letter of the law. It's that referee's perception of mitigation and whether something's high danger or not high danger. It seems to me that it can change from ref to ref, and when it comes to the difference between red and yellow cards, does that feel right? I'm not sure.
It didn't to me, but to be honest,
didn't have a bearing on the game.
Difference in the end. Arundel just tap dancing his way to the try line half the time. Frost ran one in from 50 minutes. I'm not being funny. Dan Frost is a good player, and he's got good wheels for a hooker. But the fact that he managed to go half the length of the pitch untouched smacks of a lack of effort on the Red Bulls' part to me, and that was how it read. I just felt, watching this one, I just felt like the end of the season can't come soon enough for them, and they're not the only club by any stretch, but the end of the season clearly can't come soon enough. There's some players there that have given up the hope, I think, of remaining in the Prem next season. I will put a slight shout out to Brocklebank's Trivella assist for Hurl, dribbling it past, I think it's Carreras, possibly, which was a nice little flick. But other than that, I mean, it was just a blowout, and it didn't, I suppose from Bath's perspective, it was maybe nice to get some backs in on the act.
Yeah, a rare occasion.
But I don't know. There's just nothing really you can't really say anything about this because at this point, I think at this point, everyone will just quite like to ignore the Red Bulls and just wait until next
Yeah.
season when we think they're going to be better.
Yeah, well, if they're not better, serious questions will be asked.
Yeah.
I'd be really intrigued to know what's going on in the boardrooms in Salzburg or Vienna, wherever the Red Bull are based. I can't remember.
Do you know what? I bet they're not even bothering to look.
Yeah,
I bet they've gone. I bet someone would have said to them, "This season's going to be crap. We've scraped together a squad. Don't worry about it. We'll sort it out next year."
give us 24 months before coming in and checking on us and giving us a performance review. And I hope for the sake of the competition that they are a more competitive side next year, because it's games like this, especially when we're coming to like a crunch point in the season where positions are becoming important. When a side gets like, such a gimme 5 points, like I know someone might argue, oh, Saints put 90 on Bristol, but no one was expecting that. Everyone was expecting Bristol to put 60 odd points on Newcastle, and that's exactly what they did. And that's Bath not really getting out of third gear. Like I'm pretty confident that they were under the instruction to use it as a defensive drill, because Bath actually made more tackles than Newcastle. But I just think it's because they thought, well, let's just use it as an opportunity to hone our defence, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
It was an exercise in counter punching, and they kept counter punching and scoring tries, and then they just soaked up, honed their defence, counter punch, score another try, go again. They didn't even try that hard at scrum time. Like Tom Totoy was up against Connor Hancock on his Prem debut. Like a 22-year-old prop who hasn't been given much time. Either he's a lot better than we thought, or Tom Totoy was just not trying that hard because there wasn't too much of a competition at scrum time.
I just get the impression they weren't really giving it their all, and because they didn't need to.
Yeah,
and you don't in those games. You just don't.
No.
I've been involved in blowouts. I've been on the receiving end of blowouts. Don't get me wrong, but I've been involved in blowouts, and you just in the end you're coasting.
Yeah, it's not the best advert for the competition, in which case we move on swiftly to the next game, which is turn up for the books, Rory. Yeah. Over at the Allianz, the Twickenham Harlequins up against the Exeter Chiefs, and it's safe to say we were very wrong in our prediction here, Rory.
Well, we were. I mean, I think we did caveat that Quins are often better at HQ than they are than their form often suggests. But no, I didn't see this coming. I'll be honest, after the first half, already the first half an hour, when Chiefs have gone 4 tries up, I really didn't see this coming. I mean, Campbell Riddle scores after 6 minutes with a really nice crossfield from Skinner. But it's the way that came about. It was Quins actually started quite well with the ball, but the Chiefs D'd up well, stole the ball, box kicked it, won the ball back, won a penalty, went to the line-out maul in the corner, mauled it well, got penalty advantage, and then crossfield to Riddle to score it. And that blueprint immediately just screamed, this is going to be another blow-up, because that was incredibly easy, and Chiefs barely had to get a third gear. They just had to play their patterns that they played for a lot of this season, and they would just scoring tries at will. Varney then scores a few minutes later. They basically get the ball to Paul Brown-Bampo, who flattens poor Lucas Friday, and then I think it's Marcus Smith in the backfield.
Yeah.
Offloads it to Slade, and who picks off the last defender and puts Varney under the sticks. And, that first 10 minutes was just like, right, Chiefs just need to go through the motions here because Quins haven't turned up again. And then it seems like if you take out that first 10 minutes, the rest of the half is actually won by Quins, 14-12, I think, or 14-10. And once Quins sort of turned it around and sort of got into the game, they started to look really impressive. Kenningham scores a try that's very quite classic Quins in the sense of they win a turnover penalty. They're usually good at the breakdown. Kenningham wins, I think wins the turnover penalty. They go to the line-out maul, strong maul, but then Kenningham picks the ball up around the fringes of the next ruck and dives over. And it looks sort of like Quins have got a foothold in the game. But then Chiefs go back the other end of the field. They win a penalty at the breakdown and pull off this really well-constructed line-out move where Varney peels around the front, isolates Lucas Friday and gives it to the hooker who barrels over. I mean, Lucas Friday is a really good player who I'm really excited to see develop, but he's not getting any bigger than what he is now, and he got flattened a couple of times in this game
Yeah, they definitely
by
they
the
definitely
bigger boys.
identified that, didn't they?
And then Ikitau scores really hard line through three defenders. But Quins were definitely back in the game at this point. Northmore scores after about 35 minutes, and they nearly get another try right on half time. Elliot Williams' try was really harshly ruled out for a knock on, and I think in that it was
Jouet.
a pixel of difference between his hand and the ball. I think you just give it at that point.
I would have given it.
But yeah, 14-24. I mean, I thought Quins had improved in the half and worked strong, but I assumed Chiefs would just keep out in front and probably just keep Quins at arm's length. But the second half performance by Quins, I mean, have they played better this season?
It's definitely the best I've seen them. It's definitely the most. It felt like it's the most I've seen them playing with purpose, and it felt like that they'd found that oomph, that extra metre or two in the carry, and they had that breathless energy that the best Quins teams have had over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
That has kind of been missing all season. I do have my own theory on what's happened in this particular game, and I don't think it's fairly ominous from a Chiefs perspective. I was looking at the stats for kind of playing time played by the main players for each team. So for Exeter, for instance, if you were to take the top 15 players in their playing minutes, they average out around 875 minutes across the top 15 players. That's about 125 minutes more than pretty much every other team, which means that they are not rotating the squad. They're the team that does the least amount of subs. They've had several games where they've only done 2 or 3 subs, just kept the players on the pitch. I wonder whether we are seeing a little bit of burnout. We heard all about their pre-season where they absolutely kind of caned themselves with fitness to make sure they were the fittest team of all. I wonder whether they are feeling the downside of that, where it's been a long season for them with very little rotation. I think some of the players maybe...
Well, Baxter alluded to this. Yeah, Baxter alluded to this in some of his post-game comments. I think that's probably part of it. And I think you're starting to see, if you look at their bench, there are some strong names on there, like obviously Fewa Bosa was on the bench, Dweba was on the bench, Chumbadze, Tuima. Really, the other names, Hayden Wood, Cairns, Wally Brady, Berger, not the names that you necessarily expect to see on the Exeter bench. And I think you might have hit the nail on the head that they're reaching that kind of apex of the season where the squad can't quite handle the load that's been put on it. But that's not taking anything away from Quins, because, I mean, you mentioned the breathless quality. I mean, some names that really speak to that. I mean, Sam Riley was fantastic, I thought.
Yeah.
He's a player for a while. Yeah, he's been around a while, Sam Riley, and he's got some really good physical attributes. He's really mobile, but he's not quite kicked on to take on that kind of starting berth at hooker. Obviously behind Jack Walker and George Turner for most of this season. Got the opportunity to start today through, I assume, injuries. Really, really good in the loose. I thought really dangerous in the loose. He got close to bagging a couple of tries himself. I thought Luke Northmore looked excellent in this game, showing that what a good player he is at his best, which we haven't seen lots of this season. But at his best, he's actually a fantastic 13, isn't he?
I think him alongside Bryn Bradley seems to be something that might be working for them.
It seems to look good. I mean, and you imagine they've got Waghorn, they've got Oscar Beard. They've got good players to get to slot in there. But that starting pair at the weekend were really, really good. But for me, the outstanding players in this one were Charlie Cunningham South and Alex Dombrandt, who physically dominated everything they did.
It's almost like an England selection was counted, like riding on it. It's where's this come from?
Well, there is. I mean, to be fair to Dombrandt, him and Murley probably have been the two players sort of carrying what was left of the banner for Quins this season. Charlie Cunningham South, I think, has gone missing at times, but in this game he was really, really involved and really powerful. But Dombrandt, I thought was excellent, and the general physicality, was brilliant. I mean, did you see it was the Ollie Streeter hit? I think it was on Hooper. There was one where Northmore absolutely flattened Stephen Varney. Is it
Zach
Zach Carr?
Carr on Paul Brown
Zach,
Vampo, where he showed
yeah,
him the shoulder to go for, and he went for the opposite one and absolutely flattened him.
yeah, absolutely leathered him. He was filling in there because they were out of locks.
I'll tell you
I
what, though.
think,
I'll tell you what. Before, Zach Carr and Elliot Williams, hats off to those two, because they play in the most physical positions on a rugby pitch, and they're both. So Elliot Williams is, like we spoke about it before. He's 18 years old. Zach Carr
yeah,
will be more than 2021.
yeah,
These are two young lads at the very start of their career being asked to fill in the most physically, the requirements of what's needed on the pitch is so physically dominant, and they need to be strong and a presence. And to be doing it at the age they are at is credit to them. I think it's been a real
yeah.
tough season for Quins. But if there is any glimmer of positivity, it's how some of the younger players are starting to stand up and put their hands up to be, well, we should be starters next year. And
Yeah.
I think that's the one slither of hope Quins should take from this year for sure.
No, I agree. I completely agree. Yeah, I think Zach Carr, Elliot Williams, I think Will Hobson. I'm not sure how young Will Hobson is because it's hard to tell by looking at him, but he's not been frontline for very long. And he's been excellent.
He's only 23, so yeah, he's still young in proper terms.
So young for a prop. Bryn Bradley, and so Waghorn, I think when he was fit was very good. That Quins have a good academy that produces a lot of good young players, and I would expect them to continue doing so. I know they were talking Zach Carr up a lot early in the season, but I think he's actually an 8 by trade.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how he's been pulling up trees and training early on in the season, and this game really I think was a bit of a coming of age moment for him in announcing himself in the Prem, and I suspect he'll get a lot more minutes next year. Ollie Streeter, we expect to see him get a lot more minutes. He looks like he's going to be an absolute beast at tight head. But I don't think we should move on from this game before we mention Boris Wenger getting the 25-meter intercept.
Oh, what
the look on his little face!
Oh, I was so happy.
He looked like the most delighted pug in the puppy store, didn't he?
Oh, it's of all players. What a read, by the way.
Great read. Great read.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, he looks like he's slimmed down a bit actually from the start of the season.
Well, you would do once you've done a 25-meter intercept run. You will still do
it. Yeah, because it was falling off him as he was going under the sticks. But lovely read and finish, and you could see how everyone was delighted for him. The boys got right around him for that one. But I mean, an excellent performance by Quins. I mean, they have been by and large rubbish this year, but this was, I think, their best performance. I can't think of a better one. I mean, they obviously beat Saracens early on in the year, which was up there for one of their better performances, but this was properly good.
Yes, and in fact, I'm incredibly grateful for it because it has meant that there is still a little bit of narrative in the top 4 chase going into the final couple of rounds.
Yeah, well, look, there's 5 points between 4th and 6th, and this one finished 41-24 to Quins. Sadly for me, we should probably move on to one of the other challenges for that final playoff berth.
Yes, the game that you said admitted last week you weren't looking forward to, the Gloucester trip to the StoneX to face the Saracens, who are in a rich form at the moment. How would you like to address this one, Rory?
Well, look, I mean, in the one sense, I'm obviously very unhappy with the way this game panned out. And I think there's a lot of very legitimate criticism that can be levelled at the way Gloucester approached this game and the way they played it. I think they were, they said it on comms, they were giving up 3-pointers early on, like they didn't believe they could win it playing that way. They seemed to lose their shape in attack at times far too easily. The set piece was the weakest it's been for some weeks.
It went back to the start of season Gloucester at the line out for sure.
Yeah, which can happen in a game like that. We were really, really profligate with the chance we had. We did actually end up with a reasonable amount of territory and red zone entries and possession, and we weren't good enough with it. Gave the ball away way too easily, and at times we let Saracens score tries far too easily as well. The Shagan's first try, we lose a line out in Saracens 22. Fergus Burke breaks, gives it to Malins, who gives it to Shaken, they score in the corner. Just end to end, way too easy. They were very strong at the breakdown, Maritoje in particular, Ben Earl as well.
I think
Absolutely.
Atoji and Earl are looking red hot form at the moment.
They were outstanding. I mean, Maritoje was like, every time someone ran into him, apart from Arthur Clarke, everyone else who ran into him just seemed to fall at the floor.
Yeah.
He was iron in this one, iron Atoje. Ben Earl was a nuisance the whole game. Scored a good try as well. Just after the half time. Again, after Scotland, after Glasgow, oh God, after Gloucester lose a line out. There's a lot of very, very legitimate criticism of the Gloucester performance, but off the back of this season, there was also sort of enough there for me to say, look, we're obviously not very good at the moment, haven't been very good, but there's also enough good stuff going on at times where you go, well, if they could pull together an 80-minute performance performing like they did just there for that 30-second period, they'd actually be very, very good. And although that's not the strongest backing of a team, I think there's raw ingredients to this Gloucester side that still show promise. I think Ben Loader was good again.
Yeah.
I thought Charlie Atkinson was good again. I thought Max Llewellyn was good again. At the times when we actually got phases together, they were all really, really prominent. Will Joseph got a couple of good tries. I thought Josiah Roberts-Giroux, when he came on early for George Barton, did pretty well, particularly in defence. Tackled really well. I think a lot of the back line, actually, when we did get go forward, at times looked really dangerous. The difficulty is the pack seem to either lose effort or lose understanding of where they're meant to be going pretty quick. We just seem to run out of forward runners really quickly.
Yeah, there was a few moments where I was like, oh, what do I do now? What do I do now? Oh, I'll just run into contact.
Because people haven't made the effort off the ball to give Charlie an option or whatever it might be. I thought Arthur Clarke was brilliant. He carried extremely. He carried his carries through contact. I know he's a big bloke, but for a second row, he's got some real carrying power, which kind of, he doesn't necessarily look like someone who's going to be the most outstanding athlete in the team. He's quite oddly proportioned. He's 6'10", but his carrying was excellent. I think Venter's looking a lot better. Will Trenholm grafts and grafts and grafts. He's not going to be necessarily the most, he's not Tom Willis.
No one other than Tom Willis is.
No one other than Tom Willis is. What he is, though, is he's an absolute grafter. He does just keep getting off the field and carrying it. The 2 tries we scored were good tries. But I don't know, it's just, we're a weird team. We're a weird team because there are times when you think they were playing in a way that could match anyone, and then we throw it on the floor and let the other team run the other length of the field.
So I did identify one thing, which I think may be a little bit of it. So one of your shapes when you play is to have quite a wide out pass from your first phase. So it'll be like straight from the base to second receiver. So like a 20-meter pass to the midfield. Yeah. When you've got Thomas Williams, he can zip those passes like no one else. Palin can't. So when he was doing it, there was like an extra half second where the ball was floating in the air, and Saracens' defence, which was a drift defence on the day, just reacted to it and just smothered the ball carrier straight away. And it halted Gloucester behind the gain line over and over and over again. And I think that's why you came a few moments where it just looked like, oh, what do we do now? Because you'd lost that platform you'd had over the last few weeks. So I think that's where such a small little detail, and it's like that split second difference between pace on a wide out pass.
Just unravelled.
Unravelled. It showed sometimes with rugby it can be fine details. There was just something that became quite apparent the more I honed in on it. So it's definitely, if you are going to rewatch the game, just look at the pace of pass on any of those, because it's quite telling when you watch it back. But ultimately, Saracens, I think the only criticism to Saracens was they didn't put Gloucester to the sword in a game where they really probably should have.
Yeah, I think some of Gloucester's desperate defence on the red zone 2 or 3 times was really, really good and kept Saracens out when they probably should have scored, or kept them to getting a 3 when they looked like they should have scored a try.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably fair that Saracens were I mean, at times uber clinical, but then also not clinical enough, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I know Saracens aren't your favourite team, and there are a lot of people's not favourite team. But some of the players they have when they're on song are just so effective. They're just constantly effective. Maritoje and Bernal are good examples. Tom Willis, obviously, a brilliant example. Theo McFarland, obviously, off to France this summer. I mean, no wonder someone wanted to come in for him. He's
so good.
effective constantly. Nick Ezekwe in this Saracens team is just a really effective cog, just constantly doing the right thing over and over again. You know, their scrum, which they don't often have a dominant scrum, but it just works. It works really well. You know, and then you've got Reece Carey and Jamie George in particular who, you know, are effective around the field. Theo Dan comes on, he's really good around the field. Irani Maui is good around the field. Charlie Bracken and Fergus Burke as the halfback partnership, I think, is really clicking for them. Van Zyl, you know, I think we've probably both said our piece on Van Zyl at various times over the last year or so. Going back to South Africa this summer, I mean, obviously got Thomas Williams coming in. I think Thomas Williams and Charlie Bracken as scrum half options is
solid.
Potent, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Fergus Burke looks so much better at 10 when he's got a zippy 9 inside him.
I also really like Ollie Hartley.
Ollie Hartley, well, I was just going to come to Ollie Hartley. I think he was up against Seb Atkinson in this game, and they're quite similar physiques, quite similar players in a lot of ways in the way they play the game. I mean, Seb Atkinson maybe a bit more of a ball player. Ollie Hartley maybe a bit more of a power athlete, possibly, but there's not loads in it between them in those fronts. But he measured up really well against Seb Atkinson, this one, who, again, didn't have a particularly poor game, just suffered from probably what you identified, actually. It was a really good identification, I should say. But I think Ollie Hartley looks like a player who, if you give him a platform, can be genuinely lethal at 12. Runs really good lines. He is really powerful. You know, he's got enough speed for his size to be really effective, almost in that kind of Jamie Roberts mould of, yeah, he might not be out and out a pace man, but he's fast enough that when you combine it with the size of him, it's going to clatter someone. And then if you have someone like Fergus Burke or Charlie Bracken feeding him, who just know what he can do, just feeding the ball straight away and trust him, I think he's a really, really effective runner.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Nick Tompkins outside him is having one of his best seasons in a Sarri shirt for a long time. So, I know you said that Saracens aren't my favourite team, but I fully recognise that I am a big fan of what they've been doing this season with the young players. I quite like how they've adapted to their style of play. They've moved away from being, well, to be flippant, they're no longer the Bath of the league this season. They're not pack orientated. They've got something about them. Like, there's a reason before this weekend they scored the most tries, because they're trying some different stuff, different things, and I can only applaud some of the stuff they've done this year. So they may not be my favourite team, but they're not my least favourite team now. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair assessment. And no, I think Saracens look ominous. You know, we said it last week. They look ominous. I actually expect them now to make the playoffs. I think they'll win their last couple of games, and I think Northampton. If I was a Northampton fan, and I'm not, if I were David, and I was thinking, we're looking pretty good to get that top berth of the league and that home semi-final, and then I found out Saracens were the team coming along, I maybe wouldn't lose all my confidence, but I'd have a shiver going up my spine a little.
I'd rather play them than Leicester at the moment.
That's fair, but I think actually third and fourth at the moment, my current likely third and fourth, which I think will be Leicester and Saracens. You know, every winner of the Prem's always had to start with a home semi-final.
Could that
might not be the case.
Yeah.
That could well change.
I'm fully aware that it's going to be very, very close amongst the top four when it comes down to these knockout games. I know that for a fact. Yes, as a Saints fan, getting top spot, I do not take that lightly, and I do not think we've got an easy route to the final in any way, shape, or form. Whoever gets fourth, and I suspect Saracens will get it as well. But yeah, they pulled off another win against Gloucester, and it's pretty poor record for Gloucester at the Stone X, I believe. And
Only one win, 12. We've only got one win away at Saracens in 17, I think.
oh dear. Well, it certainly wasn't. There wasn't any signs of that changing in this game.
No.
Was it 30?
30-14.
30-14. So, yeah, comfortable win for Saracens and nothing to take home to Kingsholm for Gloucester. Then, final game of the round, Leicester Tigers up against Sale Sharks over at the Core Pack in lovely Salford. What did you make of this game, Rory? Because I know I just prefaced this by saying I wouldn't want to play Leicester, but there was a few little glimpses here, and there's been a very glaring issue that's emerged from this game in a particular position for a Leicester fan. What did you make of it?
Well, look, losing James O'Connor early is obviously a problem. Orlando Bailey's an absolutely fine 10, but if Billy Sell's out for the rest of the season, which sounds like he is, and James O'Connor could be out for the rest of the season, which he could well be off the back of a hamstring injury, there will be some nerves.
Yeah.
In Tigers ranks. Losing that additional ball player at 12, I think, is a real problem for them, because it's been working so well having that dual playmaker role, because they don't get it with Stewart. One of Stewart's detractions, whatever you want to call it, for all his qualities as a fullback in the league in particular, he's not a second playmaker most of the time. I know he did juice it a little bit last week in particular, but not really, not in the same way as Furbank or even Joe Carpenter in the Sale Nets. And I think Tigers have looked way better having two playmakers in there, and it's enabled them to bring Will Wand into the game. It's enabled them to get the best out of their wingers. Very talented wingers. It's enabled them to get their pack moving around the pitch more and being effective in other areas. It could really hamstring their title charge. Be interested to see how they perform this. I mean, particularly interested to see what their injury report looks like, whether they can get James O'Connor or Billy Sell back on the pitch.
The fact that they took Orlando Bailey off,
caught on more time.
It suggested to me that perhaps the early signs when James O'Connor wasn't great, and they needed to protect him at all costs.
No, and I don't think it's any. I mean, they took him off for Whiteley.
Tom Whiteley, yeah.
Tom Whiteley is a scrum half, so maybe it's not a surprise that after that he didn't score any more points. But certainly think they'll be putting Orlando Bailey in a sealed, locked chamber over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. For the first hour or so of this game, they were pretty devastating. Still,
yeah. They were very, very good. And they continue to be a very impressive outfit, and when they are flowing, I think my question mark for them at the moment is that fly half conundrum they've got, and it's just that the strength coming off the bench. Maybe it was just this game specifically, certainly in the front row. I know Van der Fleer actually had a good game when he came off, but Van der Fleer and Hurd as your backup props, it just kind of halts a bit of momentum when you're comparing it to Nicky Smith and Joe Hayes.
Yes, I think it probably does. What I would say is I think their starting front row are
one of the best
actually all very capable of playing longer than they did in this game.
Yeah, true.
I don't think they're actually 50-minute players. I think Archie van der Fleer in particular has come on leaps and bounds this season. Actually, I mean, he's scored a good try. I actually think his scrummaging has come on really, really strongly this season. I suspect he'll be a key part of the Tigers squad moving forwards. But yes, I will accept that their second string front row is not their strongest. Take that aside though, you've got Cam Henderson, Ollie Cracknell, Hamish Watson, Tom Whiteley, Solomon Akata. The rest of that bench isn't bad.
No, it's not bad. I worry. Well, no, I don't worry at all because I don't worry about Leicester.
You revel.
I revel in the fact that maybe that they're. I don't know what their injury situation is because they haven't got like any. It just feels like there's a few.
Ilione, Joseph Woodward, Isaiah Parisi, was he suspended, as he often is? Look, I think there's a couple of concerns there. I think Ilione is certainly one they'd like to have back there, although I think Hamish Watson's not a bad person to have on the bench, even at his age.
No.
I think the ten situation is the problem. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
that is the problem. To be
And
fair,
that and Joseph Woodward not being available
yeah,
because he is a second pair of hands at 12.
yeah. Because when you put Kata in there, it's not the same, is it?
Yeah, he's
Kat-
route one. He
yeah,
is just route one. He's very good route one. Don't get me wrong. He's a brilliant bloody route one player, but you aren't getting much more out of him than that. And if you lose the ability to bring Will Wand into the game the way he's playing, I mean,
so good.
the try he scored, that vision was really trying to avoid saying magical, but I'm not going to. It was magical.
Yeah.
And I think the interplay between, I mean, Radwan's pass for the Hassel Collins try, there seems to be some real chemistry there as well. And the fact that they're getting their right wing across to finish off a move with a lovely long looped pass to their left wing suggests that the Tigers' blueprint has evolved a little.
Compared to last season, where our biggest criticism was that they weren't able to get the ball in their hands at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Well, they don't.
not a problem
They don't
anymore.
seem to, they don't seem to have that problem now. But they still got a second row and two front rowers scoring this game, so they're not completely. In fact, no, sorry, three front rowers scoring in this game, I should say. So it's not completely gone, as well as the number 8. But I think that if Orlando Bailey stays fit and they can adapt their game plan so that they can slice Kata at 12 without losing the ability to get the ball to Will Wand, House Collins, Adam Radwan, they're still a massive, massive threat.
Yeah, huge threat.
But there's a couple of ifs there. There's ifs.
Yeah. There's question marks.
There's more ifs now than there were last week.
Yeah.
For Sale, came away with a point and weren't a million miles off coming away with 2 points in the end. I mean, it was a bit of a last quarter dash to score some tries, but they did score a couple of nice tries. I don't know, it's another one where, let's be fair, the end of the season can't come soon enough for Sale. It's been a car crash of a campaign for them.
Well, England games around the corner because they've thawed out Tom Curry, taking him out as cryo freeze and giving him a couple of minutes in the league, which is always nice to see.
Yeah, he's back into the England squad, so he'll probably be starting in the summer, come away with another hit pointer or something, and they won't see him again until Christmas.
Yeah, that is the Curry flow. But yeah, there's not a lot to take from this from Sale. Some nice tries, but I think you said earlier there's some teams waiting for the season to come to an end. I think they're one of those teams because they've announced today their long list of leavers. There's a few players on there that are surprised to see that they're letting go. So Onasanya's one they're letting go.
Yeah, surprised he was going. I know they've brought in some front rowers, but I thought they'd keep him around because I thought he was. I think he's going to Coventry, maybe.
I've not looked into where they're going, but there are certainly more names than I had on my anticipated
20 players, I think are either leaving or been released. Obviously, some have been signed elsewhere, mostly by Newcastle.
But it's a big turnaround. I didn't anticipate it would be quite so big. So Sale are also going through their own project next season. So the interesting thing next year is there's a couple of teams that are really going through a bit of a transformation, and you can tell it's almost no coincidence that it's Sale and Newcastle who are waiting for the season to end, because they're the ones going through the biggest amount of change into next season.
Well, I think the question is going to be, can they cobble together enough cohesiveness to utilise that before the start of next season? I mean, Newcastle in particular, that's a massive question. It's a big if.
Yeah. I think Sale will do it quicker than Newcastle, but it won't. We saw with Gloucester this year, it takes time. And it's only just really starting to click now for Gloucester. It was nowhere near the scale of Sale or Newcastle. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare. But yeah, it's a solid win for Leicester. It secures them a playoff spot, and it's just remains to be seen whether they are able to push for. Well, they've got to play Bath on the final game of the season.
That's a titanic game, that.
I really, really hope that second and third.
If they beat Bath at the Rec to take the semi-final to Welford Road, it will be massive.
That would be huge, and I would love to see it. And I think the last is also some quite interesting matches because I think Saracens have got to play Bristol. And
I will tell you the final fixtures, David.
Yeah, I think those three teams have to play each other in some format.
So European finals this weekend.
Yeah.
The top 4, so the weekend after, Bristol are home to Bath. Bristol will obviously want a massive response, and it's at Ashton Gate. Saracens are home to Quins. Obviously, that's the London derby. Be interesting to see how they get on there. Saints are at home to Gloucester. I would expect Saints to win that if I'm being frank. Red Bulls at home to Sale. Tigers at home to Chiefs. That's an interesting game now.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
And then in the final reckoning, we have got Bath at home to Tigers, as we've already said. Chiefs at home to Saracens. So Chiefs have got two massive games to finish it off. Gloucester at home to the Red Bulls. Quins at home to Saints. Again, would expect you to win that one.
It'll be interesting. I guess a lot depends on where the teams below Saints are. Because if they're comfortably already with a home semi-final,
they might.
Do they rest players?
Well, don't, because that might put Page of Gloucester in the Champions Cup. And then Sale at home to Bristol. So Bristol will hope they're still in the offing on that final game, because they'll back themselves there, I suspect. We haven't done a predicted table, David. At some point we probably should, but I think my gut feel is it will finish Saints, followed by Tigers, followed by Bath, followed by Saracens.
I would agree with you pre-James O'Connor's injury. I worry about Leicester's shape and whether Bath will slip up enough to allow that to happen. So I think it will be Saints, Bath, Leicester, Saracens. But if you were to ask me this a week ago, I would have said Saints, Leicester, Bath, Saracens. But I just think
it could all change.
It could all change. But I'm just so glad the last 2 weeks, there's still stuff to play for. But Rory, we're not done yet. We have to squeeze in a bit of news we didn't talk about in the news. The England training camp squad announced the Nations Championship, a 3-day training camp, bringing together 42 players to align themselves with Steve Borthwick and his new coaching team ahead of the inaugural Nations Championship. So let's quickly talk about that squad announcement, and then we're going to do a little exercise where we're always going to name his strongest 15, and I'm going to do a lovely little exercise pointing out how much depth there is in England at the moment by pointing out all the players who've missed out. And a strong 15 that can be built off that. But what did you make of the squad in general, Rory?
Some interesting omissions, particularly in Bath. Some backs in Bath maybe lamenting the lack of ball they've been given in recent weeks, because obviously Jomo, Lawrence, Arundel all missing out. Fucking a Singer as well, you could argue. I suspect... I mean, Ajomo's been a bit in and out with injury, as has Lawrence. So maybe that comes down to it. Maybe Arundel's been told, going away and improve a few things before you get another shot.
I think he's still suffering from being hauled off and that red card, Six Nations.
Yeah. He's 23. His chance hasn't gone, but he's got to work himself back in. The Ajomo and Lawrence omissions are a little harder to explain until you realise that they've finally been able to pick Bernard Yancey van Rensburg.
Yes.
The native Bristolian.
Caused a bit of uproar, that selection, I'd say, on social media.
It has.
Where do you stand on it?
If you're absolutely objective about it, it's the right call. He's been brilliant in the Prem for 4 or 5 years. He's been the standout centre in that time, pretty much bar no one. And if he's available to play for England and he's committed, why shouldn't he play for England? It sticks to the core a little when you get a bit emotional about it, because obviously it's a 29-year-old ex-baby Bok blocking the pathway of someone who's come through the England ranks, potentially. But if you're Steve Borthwick, the way things have gone this year, you're probably just going to say, I want the best players, and he's definitely one of the best players, which he definitely is.
Well, and if you argue they're playing South Africa, how better to prepare yourself against playing a South African side by putting a South African in your squad to be the opposition and play the role of Damien Dialende in training, so that you can really prepare for that scenario. That's a strong argument by itself in my books. And
it is.
If he's eligible, he's eligible at the end of the day. Like, we can get on our moral high ground and say it's not right. We can say all this, that, and that. If he's eligible, and if he wants to play for England, and Steve Borthwick wants to select him, so be it.
Ultimately, that's where I land on it, I think. And I can understand why there's some reticence behind it, but I can't blame Steve Borthwick for doing it.
Well, and all the names that have been thrown out by people of players that have been blocked. So Ajomo, I suspect he's been left out because he's been injured. He's only played 20 minutes of Prem Rugby. This is just a training camp. He could still make the squad. Bear that in mind, people. Lawrence hasn't played any rugby since having an injury. He may still be injured. So again, why would you bring him for a training camp where he may not even be able to play? The other names I've seen, like Tom Litchfield, fantastic. He played Van Rensburg off the park on the weekend. But Litchfield isn't. He is still young, and he's still. This is kind of his breakout year, if anything.
Yeah.
Let's kind of be a bit patient with him. He's got a lot of rugby to play in his career. Van Rensburg does have 5 seasons of some solid stuff under his belt. Like, I don't know why people are writing that off so freely. And some of the stuff I've seen about, is Van Rensburg better than anyone else you got? Where have you been the last 5 seasons?
Yeah, he is. He is. And he can play 10, 12, 13 and has done for Bristol. He probably is the best centre in the league.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with that. He's certainly been the most consistent over the last few seasons, for sure, by a long shot. So I'm comfortable in it in that sense. I do get the argument about it blocking the way, but I also think we just have to look at some of the other sections in the squad. That it's not like they're trying to block every position. It's just centre's been a position of issue for a while, and we've spoken about some time about the prospect of Van Rensburg coming in. So let's have a look at him, and that's what they're doing in this training camp. But you look, they've picked Kepi Tuipulotu to see how he fares in the hooker shirt. They've taken Charlie Bracken and Archie McParland. They've got Noah Galore there. We can't argue this is a coaching team that's blocking the route for young English players. Because they're looking at it.
I think in some ways it's a pretty radical selection. Some of it enforced by injury, obviously missing lots of Finn Baxter, Ben Curry, Greg Fisselau, Bevan Rodd, Sam Underhill, Elliot Daly, Trevor Davison. But I think in a lot of ways there's a lot of very interesting potential combinations in there. But it would be a dereliction of duty for Borthwick to stand on moral high grounds and go, I'm not going to pick the guy with a South African name just because people might not like it. No, his job is to win games for England, and he probably quite rightly thinks Bernard Janssen van Rensburg gives him more chance of doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I find it interesting, the selection of 5 scrum halves. It makes me think that the second and third slot in the squad's really open, assuming Mitchell's got the starting shirt. So that's really interesting to me. I think this is potentially the tour for Jamie Blamire to really put his hand up to be back up to Jamie George and maybe the temporary incumbent, whilst Kepi Tuipulotu gets up to speed, perhaps. As you've alluded to, quite a few injuries in the front row specifically. Be really interesting to see how that fares in the training camp and in the summer. Oh, my voice is going, Rory. So before
let's rattle through these games.
Give me your strongest 15 that you would pick from that training camp squad.
My 15 off the back of this training squad in particular. This Genge, who said Jamie George at hooker, Joe Hayes at tight head, standard.
Yep.
Second row, I'm going to go Mara Toje and George Martin.
Yeah, I know what you're doing here. Yeah.
And then Ollie Chesham at 6.
Yep. Fine with that.
Guy Pepper at 7, Ben Earl at 8.
Yeah, Alex Cole's on the bench, I'm assuming.
We'll get through to the bench. Alex Mitchell, Finn Smith, going off fly off. I'm going to go Seb Atkinson and Bernard Janssen van Rensburg as my centres.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Big, powerful, all court games. I think there's a lot of argument to say that could be the partnership that they go with.
I'd want to see that in action, to be fair, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Manny Fawa-Boso and Tommy Freeman on the wings, and George Furbank at fullback.
Love it.
And then on the bench, I'm going Jamie Blamire, Benno Abano, Asher Poku-Fajor.
Yeah.
Alex Coles, China Cunningham South. And then this was a toss-up. I've landed on Henry Pollock, but if Tom Curry's fit, you probably end up picking Tom Curry, but maybe instead of China Cunningham South. I suspect Henry Pollock still stays in there, but those 3, I think, are in a fight for two bench spaces at the moment.
Okay.
And then we got Archie McParland and Marcus Smith.
It's hard to argue that selection, Rory. It's hard to argue that selection.
Yeah, I think the unlucky ones are Henry Slade's been excellent for Exeter this season. I think he's well within a shout of someone saying, how is he not starting? He's been brilliant. Obviously, Fraser Dingwall potentially could be the 12 as well. So there are a lot of questions in the centres. You could maybe argue the toss over Benno Abano versus Manny Yogan. That's a bit if and or if Finn Baxter's not fit. Gut feel is they will go with Chesham at 6, so I think that probably puts Coles on the bench because he can cover second row and 6 as well.
Yeah.
you could maybe get away with a specialist second row, but I don't see them picking Arthur Clarke there at the moment. Unfortunately, I don't think Nick Ezekwe is quite there. Don Brandt maybe makes a bench spot. He'd be in with a shout versus China Cunningham South possibly, but again, not certain on that. But I think I'm probably pretty close to what would be a starting 15 regardless in the summer.
Okay.
But David, who's your absentee 15?
Well, this exercise was designed to purely try and outline the depth that we have currently in English rugby. It might highlight some of the weaker areas, but it also outlines some real strength areas. So the front row is a real toss-up around, well, loose head prop's basically a big problem area at the moment in terms of depth because of the injuries he got. So I landed on potentially Josh Yosefa-Scott.
He's tired.
Is he a tight head? We'll take him out then. Will Hobson he's the one of the most minutes who's not been selected currently in the league. So yeah, I suppose we could go Big Val. I think he's 33, so depth-wise, I don't know how much longer he's going to be on the depth mines for, but I could be wrong. Tight head for Sogborn or George Kloska. Slide between the two. I'll probably land on for Sogborn. Hooker, again, a bit of a problem position. It was a toss-up between Dan Frost, Craig Wright, Jack Walker. I think if I was to take off my Saints tinted glasses, well, I'm assuming the ban might still be in place. The reason why he's not been selected for this camp, I've kind of been based on availability on this camp for England.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm
being for this. That's why I've not picked Finn Baxter, for example, because he's not been selected, or Bevan Rod. So I'll probably say Jack Walker would probably get the nod, but I'd love to see Craig Wright given a chance, or Dan Frost. That's the front row options we have available right now that haven't been selected. Second row is a lovely, lovely experience. Ben Bamber, Hugh Tizard, Ted Hill, because Bath seem to think he's a second row. Joe Owen is another one as well. I think I'd go Ted Hill, Ben Bamber, because I think that feels like a really good dichotomy of styles that could be quite interesting. Yeah,
I would make the case for Joe Batley.
Yeah, Joe Batley as well.
Or Russ Tweemer.
Yeah, he's not had a good season, to be fair. Ever since he's been signed for Red Bulls, he's gone absent for Chiefs.
No, maybe not. But yes, all good shouts. Tom Lockett and Ed Prowse not getting in there. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I forgot about Tom Lockett. Ed Prowse were not ready, but Tom Lockett, yeah, he should be in this list, to be fair. Back row, it's a real toss-up. You could basically mix and max people all over the place, but it's basically a toss-up between Miles Reed, Tom Pearson, Fitz Harding, Jack Kenningham, Callum Chick, Alfie Barbary. There'll be more that you can add to this list, but the back row stocks are stacked. Scrum half, Harry Randall, Lucas Friday, Rafi Quirk. Not bad to have in reserve.
Not bad.
Fly half, Charlie Atkinson, obviously. And Harvey Skinner, who I think is having quietly a very impressive season for Exeter Chiefs. Yeah. Centres, obviously there's a Jomo and Ollie Lawrence. But I think I'd be really interested to see Ollie Hartley and Will Wand as a centre pairing. Also as an outside option, could be Massey White and Tom Litchfield. Shows that centres is quickly becoming an area where there is a bit of depth, which 2 seasons ago was not even on the horizon. Wings and fullback, we are blessed. Hassel Collins, Arundel, George Hendy, obviously the Ginger Flash, Ollie Slightholm, the forgotten man of England rugby, Paul Brown-Bampo, Ben Loader, Joe Carpenter, Max Malins, Tom de Glanville, Will Joseph. We are blessed. I think back row and back three, we are absolutely blessed with options. And arguably scrum half as well now with the contingent of young scrum halves coming through the system.
Yeah.
If we can get the other positions, especially front row, which gives me the most concern if I was looking at it from a depth longevity perspective. But the whole point of that, Rory, is to say English rugby is in fine fettle. And
yeah, it is in a fine. It's in a good position.
It's in a good position, and I can't wait for the Nations Championship to start. But we've still got a lot of rugby to go. So next weekend is the European Champions Cup and European Challenge Cup weekend, and the big news, folks, is this podcast is going ahead, but it's going ahead sans one of our beloved hosts. Dear Rory's not available, so I am drafting in a guest host to come and join me. And it'll be, hopefully, all being well, be Murray Anderson of Blissful Rugby coming in, stepping in for Rory, and providing north of the border view of our European competition. So I look forward to having him to join me. Obviously, it won't be the same without you, Rory. He'll probably be considerably more competent and considerably more knowledgeable.
I would have thought so.
But exactly. But obviously, Rory will be back after that 1 week sojourn, I'm assuming.
Yes.
But hopefully you have a lovely time wherever it is you're going, and the listeners won't miss
Ironically,
you too
north
much.
of the border.
Well,
Yeah,
there we go.
ironically.
It's a pure substitution. But with that being said, Rory, it's time to bring this particular episode to a close. And your 1 week break from Ruxmoors Overballs. Do you have any final thoughts for the listener?
Don't miss me too much, you hear?
We've been Ruxmoors Overballs. Hope you've enjoyed listening. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, listen, and all those fun things. We'll be back again next week with some more rugby podcasting. And all we have to say for now is ta-ra.
Ta-da.